Today, we're going to be talking about some of the awesome women in rock and roll and some of the albums I have by them. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. Today, we're talking about women. Some of my favorite musicians are women. There are some incredible female musicians, some incredible female singer-songwriters, some incredible female vocalists, and we're going to talk about them today and show some albums that I own by them. This is a thread response to a relatively new channel on my turntable, a gentleman named Ed in Connecticut, I believe. And he started this thread a few weeks ago and wants folks to show 5 to 10 albums by either a female singer, a female band, a band fronted by a woman. I think I've got some of all of those. And he also wants us to talk about one of them that we've seen live. So let's get into it. I've got 10 here, and they're in no particular order. It just happened to be the order that I pulled them as I sat on the floor looking at my stacks and pulled what I pulled. This is a fantastic record from 2022. This is Skye Wallace. It's her album, Terribly Good. Skye's put out a couple records, but this is her sort of label debut, I guess. She's from the Toronto area, and this is on Six Shooter Records, which is my favorite indie label. I have a bunch of Six Shooter artists in my collection. How do I describe this? It's a great rock record. Electric rock, a lot of sort of Gibson SGs. I describe it as kind of a crunchy guitar tone record. And Skye is an incredible vocalist. There's a couple songs in here like Tooth and Nail. Really reminds me of Heart, like kind of that Barracuda kind of thing. So I think when I showed this record, when I first got it, I said it was one of the best rock records I'd heard in years, and it still is. It is friggin' amazing. We're going to go to the total opposite end of the spectrum now and show a country record. I'm not a huge country fan. I mean, I like some sort of roots kind of stuff. I don't have a lot of country. But this obviously qualifies because it's for women. This is the Highwomen. I knew nothing about them until, I don't know, 2 years ago probably, maybe 3 years ago, something like that. And I saw they were on Stern, and the first performance I saw them do was a cover of Fleetwood Mac's The Chain, which was so well done. It is for all intents and purposes, I guess, country supergroup. You have Brandi Carlile, Maren Morris, Amanda Shires, Natalie Hemby, all have solo careers in their own right. Brandi Carlile is kind of like the phenom, I guess. And Amanda Shires is married to Jason Isbell, and she's in his band and plays on his albums. The idea is this sort of pays homage to the Highwaymen from back in the 80s, Cash and Jennings and Christofferson, and I'm missing one. Doesn't matter. It sort of pays homage to that. And in fact, the title track, Highwomen, is a rewritten version of Highwaymen that they did, written by the same guy. I was just blown away by their vocal performance. Like I said, I'm not a big country guy, but I love this record. It's fantastic. Turning now to a female singer-songwriter that I think is brilliant, Kathleen Edwards. She's from Ottawa. Interesting. She had a solo career, and then she walked away from music and opened a coffee shop outside of Ottawa called Quitters. Did that for a few years, and now is back into music, and this is her sort of return to music called Total Freedom. I guess she went through some sort of, personal challenges. She was married to Colin Cripps, who's one of the guitar players from Blue Rodeo. They parted ways, and I don't know, I guess maybe that was difficult. I'm sure it is, and I don't know if that contributed to her leaving music. I don't know. But she came back with this album, which came out in 2020, and I absolutely love it. Kathleen is a songwriter in the the Canadian tradition of singer-songwriters, Gordon Lightfoot, Ian Tyson, that kind of thing. She does a very good job of painting stories with her songs, and often stories about the Canadian experience as well. I mean, she's got a song on her album Failure called Hockey Skates. I mean, that's pretty damn Canadian, but she's absolutely fantastic. I'm pretty sure I've seen Kathleen Edwards before open for somebody, because she's in that circle of musicians that I see all the time, Blue Rodeo and all of that, all of the artists that orbit their atmosphere, and she's one of them. I'm pretty sure I've seen her maybe open for the Jim Cuddy Band. I don't know. I have seen her at some point in time. I just don't recall when. So this is an interesting one. This is an EP by an artist called The Coppertone. The Coppertone is a woman named Amanda Zelina from King City, Ontario, which is just north of Toronto. She put out an album before this, and the name escapes me at the moment, and that was an independent release. And then she was signed to Dynalone Records, which is another popular Canadian indie label, and released this EP. I don't know the whole backstory, but for whatever reason, she was unhappy with that contract. So she actually started a GoFundMe called the Free Yourself campaign, I think, something along those lines, so that she could buy her way out of her recording contract with Dynalone, which she did, and actually changed her name from The Coppertone to something else. I don't even know what it was. I didn't follow her after this, but this EP and the self-released album that came before it are great. Amanda has a powerful voice, and it's kind of like a blues rock kind of thing, heavily blues influenced, electric guitar driven, great stuff. Switching to one of my absolute favorite female musicians, and this is pretty mainstream if you're in Canada, Amanda Marshall. I've shown this record a dozen times on my channel because it is one of the best records of the 90s as far as I am concerned. 1995, Amanda's self-titled release. I have described her as Sheryl Crow mixed with some soul. It is awesome. A minor US hit on here called Birmingham, but of the 10 songs, 6 of them were singles in Canada. All of them charted. This was all over the radio, was all over Much Music, which is our MTV. You still hear this all the time in the grocery store, on the radio, in the dentist's office. Like, you hear this album everywhere. Was just an absolute mainstay. If you were a teenager in the 90s, you owned this. Probably. Amazing. Even though it was her self-titled debut, some of the people on here, Leland Sklar plays bass, very famous session bass player, and Tim Pierce, another equally famous and amazing session guitar player that's played on everything, is a guitar player on here. So great album. My favorite song here is Dark Horse, which was just an awesome sort of underdog kind of song. I mean, this might be Desert Island kind of thing for me. This is how good this record is. Another female I've talked about a lot, Grace Potter from Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. To be clear, not a big fan of Grace Potter since she went solo 5 or 6 years ago. She's not taking care of her voice. Is not as good as she was with the Nocturnals. These guys were lightning in a bottle. They were just best rock show I've ever seen. They put out, I think, 5 albums in the late 2000s into the teens. Just absolutely love this band. 70s rock with a bit of blues. Phenomenal. Unfortunately, Grace got a bit of an ego and thought she was better, I guess, than the rest of the band, and blew the band up, which is unfortunate. This was their major label debut on Hollywood Records. Their second to last album, self-titled. Paris Ooh La La was the big radio hit off of here. I have seen Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. I saw them at the Danforth Music Hall in Toronto. One of the loudest concerts I've ever been to. They rocked my socks off, and it was amazing. After the show, I had the privilege of meeting Grace Potter, and she was an absolute sweetheart. Took a picture, signed an autograph, talked to her for a few minutes. I also met her guitar player, Scott Tournay. What a nice dude. I happen to have a Heritage Guitars t-shirt on. We were talking about Heritage Guitars, which was a builder in Michigan. Yeah, love Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. Not a big fan of Grace Potter. Incredible voice, but not what it used to be. For any regular viewers of my channel, this shouldn't come as a surprise if I'm doing a video about women. No, I'm not going to show Taylor Swift. But who am I going to show? Of course, I'm going to show the Bangles, because Susanna Hoffs, whew, my fantasy wife. This is an interesting release. This is from 2014. This is called, ladies and gentlemen, The Bangles. This is not a studio album. This is a collection of demos and early stuff from the days before their first album. In fact, this is Susanna Hoffs, Vicky Peterson, Debbie Peterson, and the original bass player, Annette Zielinskis, who was replaced before the first album with Michael Steele, who was the bass player through their entire run up until they broke up, and the first reunion album. I show this not because it's a great record. It's actually not. I prefer their actual studio albums better. But I show this because it's autographed. So, For Women, my favorite girl group, the Bangles. Okay, this is a band group duo. It's a duo. It's a husband and wife. This is Whitehorse. Again, a band I've talked about a lot. But they are in like my top 10 bands of all times, easily. This is Melissa McClelland, hard to see in this picture because she's in shadow, and her husband, Luke Doucette. So Luke and Melissa were successful Canadian musicians. They had their own solo careers. They have also been members of Sarah McLachlan's band for a long time. But in 2014, they decided to join forces permanently as an act. Even though Luke played on Melissa's stuff and Melissa played on Luke's stuff, they founded Whitehorse. This is their debut album, self-titled, on Six Shooter Records, that awesome indie label in Toronto that I talked about. They have recorded, I think, 8 albums, 9 albums, something like that. And the cool thing is, every album is different. This is kind of a folky record, and there's a rock record, and a pop record, and a country record, and a psychedelic record, and a blues record. But all of them sound like Whitehorse, but they're all different genres. It is bizarre, but I can't explain it. They're wonderful. Have I seen Whitehorse? Oh my God, I have seen Whitehorse countless times, probably a dozen, easily. And I have met Luke and Melissa probably just as many times, and they've been absolutely wonderful. Melissa's an absolute sweetheart. Great people to chat with. So I love Whitehorse, one of my favorite bands of all time. Second to last, I'm going to show you the female artist that I have seen more than any other, and that is my friend, Kendall Carson. Kendall is a fiddle player from, we'll call it Vancouver. She lives in BC. I think she was born in Alberta. But Kendall has been around for, I think 2008 was her first solo record. But she's not really known for her solo records. She has played with everybody. Her main gig, and her gig for the last 10 years, has been the fiddle player for Alan Doyle, formerly of Great Big Sea. There's Alan there. This is one of Alan's EPs called Back to the Harbor. She's awesome. I mean, she has played with a ton of people. She played in one of my absolute favorite local bands called the Dustin Bentall Outfit. Sadly, they're not together anymore. She's played with Elvis Costello. She has released 3 albums, solo albums, over a decade ago, on a label called Trainwreck Records in New York. And this is her best one, I think. This is All Right Dynamite, which came out in 2009. This is her second album. Awesome. Trainwreck Records is owned by Chip Taylor, who is the guy that wrote Angel of the Morning and Wild Thing. Hendrix did it, the Trogs did it. He wrote that. He's also John Voight, the actor. It's his brother. So he's all over this record. He co-wrote everything. He plays on it. It's his label. They did not part well, but that story I'm not going to share. But anyway, this is her second her second solo album, which was called "All Right Dynamite" from 15 years ago already. But you'll find her singing and fiddling along with Alan Doyle. I mean, is the best place to find her. I have probably seen Kendall in concert 30 times, probably, in all the different bands that she's been in. Yeah, she's a friend of mine. I try to get a chance to see her every time she's in town, but great singer, probably the best fiddle player in Canada. And last, I could not have a discussion about female musicians or singers or groups or whatever without talking about who I consider to be the greatest female singer of all time, and that would be Miss Linda Ronstadt. I don't think there's ever been a voice like hers. Absolutely incredible. I don't really care for her 80s stuff, and she did some Mexican stuff and some stuff with some orchestras, and, she did that Trios album with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. Not a fan of that. But her 70s stuff, like stuff she did with the Stone Ponies was good, but then her solo stuff in the 70s, just absolutely, that voice is incredible. My favorite song of all time is Tumbling Dice, which is a Rolling Stones song she covered. It's on her album's Simple Dreams. This is Heart Like a Wheel. You're No Good, It Doesn't Matter Anymore. When Will I Be Loved? Yeah, this is a fantastic record. Her voice is just, it's powerful, it's beautiful, it's incredible. Also, her guitar player is one of my favorite guitar players of all time, Waddy Wachtel. So, I don't think Waddy plays on this album. No, I don't think so. But he plays on her other stuff. So, the greatest female singer of all time. It's unfortunate that she can no longer sing anymore, but she leaves behind a hell of a body of work and rightfully has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Here you go, Ed. There's my 10 female singers, girl groups, musicians, what have you. Hope the video wasn't too long, but it's a fun topic to talk about. What are some of your female favorite musicians? Let me know in the comments. If I don't know them, I'd be curious to check them out, so let me know. That's everything for me today, everybody. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the flip side.